The playoffs are not that far away, about the same as the football season. We're talking NASCAR, so that means that Jerry Bonkowski is joining me here. He of NBCSports.com, the right rev of speed. You can also listen to him on Sirius XM. And let's see here. I mean, we come off we're moving this up a half hour. Jerry's schedule demands that we do that. And let's see, a gas mileage race here, if you will. Denny Hamlin winning the race up in Pocono. And I got to ask you a stupid question to start then. Because as I'm hearing this with gas mileage, we can all appreciate that when we've had the needle on E and can we make it to the gas station. I got to ask this. I mean, today's car, you buy one, it can tell you exactly how many miles are left in the tank. How come a modern-day stock car can't have the same thing?
Well, because it doesn't have the electronics that the modern street car has.
Okay.
So that's one of the biggest problems. That if they had the same electronic capabilities that we have on our own cars, it'd be a different story. But I mean, the basic genesis of NASCAR is to do as much as you can with the most basic setups. I mean, of course, we went to electronic fuel injection not too long ago, a few years ago. Before that, it was all carburetors and things like that. But I think that where we're at right now with NASCAR, there's always a lot of drama with fuel mileage races, and some people don't like them. I get that. I mean, you're never going to please everybody. But yesterday, in my opinion, was very much of a high drama situation because we didn't know who was going to have enough fuel to make it to the end.
Sure.
If it had not been for those last two cautions, a lot of guys, maybe including Denny Hamlin, may not have made it to the end.
I get that. I was curious, I mean, if this was ever put on a car, because one time you mentioned the fuel injectors, the sealed engine, supposedly, that was 20 years ago when they started going into the lower series. I remember how controversial that was. But if, just just for theory's sake, if you ever could have that sensor to the mile in your car, if you will, the strategy would change, but I think it would be when you would pit. Not necessarily is he going to, run out or not. Now, you'd lose something, but you'd still have a different kind of strategy. I don't know. I mean, do you think it could ever come to NASCAR?
Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons why they pay crew chiefs such big bucks.
Yeah.
They're the ones that do all the math on the top of the pit box, whereas the drivers, they essentially just have to do their job of getting the car from point A to point B. And that's why they rely so heavily upon the crew chiefs to say, you got this amount of fuel left, you give this many laps to go, we may be a lap or two or three short, and here's what we're going to have to do in strategy. So, I mean, if there was no crew chiefs on the top of the pit boxes, this would be a whole different ballgame for drivers because, drivers basically are just, point and go kind of guys, whereas if they have to start really thinking about strategy and worrying about how much fuel they have left and, tires, whether to go 2 or 4 tires, things like that, it would be very difficult for them to do that.
Well, then this is, Chris Gabehart, who's the crew chief for Denny Hamlin. I mean, now he's established himself as something of a strategist, has he not?
He has. I mean, he's certainly learned from a lot of the best in the business, not only guys, other crew chiefs within Joe Gibbs' organization, but, just other crew chiefs like a Chad Canales or, people that, are some of the top crew chiefs in the business. So, he's definitely a strategist. They've won 3 races this year, and that includes the Daytona 500. He's got a lot to be proud of this season for what he's accomplished with Denny Hamlin.
Now, Hamlin passed, I think it was Eric Jones, around with 15 laps left or so. I know there was the caution at the end, and certainly the last 2 laps when they restarted in overtime, and just Hamlin seemed to just go away from the pack. You thought for a second, maybe someone will catch up, and then, nope, they won't. But I wanted to ask, the Eric Jones has been doing really well this year now, at least the last 3 races, in terms of being competitive. He hasn't won one yet. I think he's 13th overall in the point standings, but I'm getting the idea that maybe this is a dark horse, because here he has finished, correct me if I'm wrong, but top 3 the last 3 races. And, tell us a little bit about Eric Jones. Is this the next breakout performer in NASCAR? Because he's doing so well and he's just missing.
Well, I mean, you're kind of read my mind, because that's what I was thinking of yesterday after the race. I mean, really good position where he's at right now. And, you look at where he's come from and where he's hopefully going, he still has not signed the contract, the contract extension with Joe Gibbs Racing, because this is the last year of his current contract. So, a win would certainly, assure him, well, let's not say assure, but a win would certainly increase his chances of, staying with the team. But also, it also would, enhance his chances for the future as well, too, that he has job security for the next 2 or 3 years, whatever the next contract would be. So, the thing is, we've got 5 races left in the regular season. I think that he definitely has a very good chance of winning a race. The question is where and when. But I'm pretty sure you'll see him in the playoffs no matter what. And, he very, very likely could be a dark horse, when it comes to those playoffs. I mean, he's doing so well. He's peaking at the right time right now. And if he can carry that momentum into the playoffs, he could definitely be a formidable opponent to be aware of, for sure.
Jerry Bonkowski, moving him up in a batting order here. Hank Aaron hits second, too, so at times. So, it's what we're doing. Jerry here for his schedule. Joining me, NBCSports.com, Sirius XM, the right rev of speed. As I look here, you mentioned Joe Gibbs, and they've just been so dominant. I think they've won 11 of 21 races this year. Now, why is Joe Gibbs winning so much this season? What advantage do they have on their competition, Stuart Haas or whoever?
I think it's just, not only is it they have some of the best cars out there, it's the personnel they have, the drivers, the crew chiefs, the guys on the pit crews, back at the shop, the engineers. I mean, they have the best of the best when it comes to when it comes to personnel. So, 11 wins out of 20, an extremely, extremely impressive statistic. And I think that, right now, you'd have to say that Joe Gibbs Racing probably is the number one candidate to win the championship. Be
sure.
it any of the 4 drivers that they make the playoffs. That includes Eric Jones, but Denny just went the Daytona 500 win. He's got 3 wins so far this season, including yesterday. Kyle Busch. Just you look at you look at where those guys have come from and where, because remember, what was it back in, I want to say it was 2016, I think it was. Joe Gibbs Racing only had a couple of wins, I think.
Yeah.
So, yes, they've really bounced back in a big way. And, Marky, we've talked about this numerous times this year. We've talked about the Camaro coming on board. Talked about the Ford Mustang coming on the scene. But here's Toyota doing so well with the old tried and true Camry. And, apparently the Supra's, in the works to come on board. But, they're doing well with what they've had for this whole period of time. So, it'll be interesting to see how they do respond once the Supra does come onto the series next year. But I think that right now it's very difficult to pick against any of the 4 drivers in Joe Gibbs Racing.
Sure. If smart money is right there, it's like betting on the Detroit Tigers. Against the Detroit Tigers and all this. I tell people that if they want to buy a house, that's probably the best way to do it. We're talking to Jerry Bonkowski of NBCSports.com, also Sirius XM. He joins us usually every Monday and Friday at 1, but his schedule, so I moved him up in a batting order. Like I said, I've seen Darrell Evans hit second. That sort of thing. I should probably make some more contemporary ball player references. But let me ask you something contemporary that'll happen next year that'll have a lot of people really talking. And I believe it's how next year, when Pocono has back-to-back races, okay, something different. Hey, an exciting change. Why not? But you're not going to have qualifying, in the morning and then run the race immediately afterwards. And so they're going to do it where they invert the field. I think it's whoever led a lap but finished the lowest would come and then finish first on Sunday next year. If that makes any sense to people.
Right.
I, though, thought about this and I said, you know what? Why not? We always talk about this. This is an age-old debate in sports. Hey, why is it that the team that finishes in last place gets the first pick in the draft? Why do the Arizona Cardinals get the first pick in the NFL draft? Why don't the New England Patriots? Didn't they earn it? We can talk about competitive balance, but Wouldn't this be an opportunity to put that theory in place? How'd they come up with this idea?
I think it's a great idea myself. I mean, the fact that you're giving the best opportunity for the teams that sometimes either are underfunded, don't necessarily have the quality of personnel, things like that. So I think that you look at the inversion principle for next year at Pocono. And remember, they're only going to have one qualifying session, if I'm not mistaken, for both races. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. I'm very excited to see it happen. I mean, there's a number of reasons why they're going to have the two races, on the same weekend. Remember, next year is also an Olympic year, so that could be part of the situation why they're going to have the back-to-back races.
Sure.
So, you just whether or not they're going to continue that, I don't know. I've not heard. I'd like to see it though, and I think that if it goes really well in Pocono, how will it play? Maybe let's say maybe at a Bristol. Although I don't see a Bristol ever doing taking the March and the August races and combining them.
Mm-hmm. Well,
but there are other tracks though that could very potentially have back-to-back weekend races, and I think it's also a precursor, Marky, to what I've been advocating for well over a decade, and that's to have races, in the middle of the week, or maybe even a Monday night
sure.
race, much like Monday Night Football, or maybe a Wednesday or a Thursday midweek race in prime time. I think there's so many, possible situations that could arise from the Pocono races next year, the back-to-back on the same weekend situation. I think that it could be fantastic for the long-term revitalization of the sport, if you will.
10 years ago or so, I remember when the Daytona 500, because of rain and such, was pushed back to Monday night. And, I mean, what the attention that was. I mean, I was going out of my way to make sure I was in front of a TV to watch the Daytona 500, even when it had a rain delay. And I was surprised how many people actually stayed up and through the rain delay to watch the Daytona 500. It had become the biggest event of the day. And my favorite story is that Mike Lupica, the famous sports writer, he had never watched a NASCAR race before until it was on Monday night. And he's calling up all his friends and how do I watch this race, and all this. And they're giving him tips and all this, how to watch a stock car race. It wouldn't have happened if that race wasn't on Monday night. So think about the exposure that could give. Like you say, I agree with you totally, Jerry Bonkowski and such.
Yeah, I think it would be a definite game changer. I mean, you look at. I was reading something last night, ironically enough, about ESPN and its history over the years, and when you look at what Monday Night Football did for ABC, and then eventually at the ESPN,
Mm-hmm.
that was just an incredible event or situation. I mean, if we would have gone back, into the late '60s before Monday Night Football even came about, people would say, "Huh, Monday night? Why would you want to have?"
Yeah.
And it's proven to be such a fantastic thing. So I think there's certainly NASCAR could have its own version of Monday Night Football, only be Monday Night stock car racing or Wednesday or Thursday. There's always been that argument that, so many fans come from a long, appreciable distances for the weekends that they wouldn't come for an in-week race. And I disagree with that. I mean, especially if you have a track that's, within a large major or near a large major metropolitan area. I mean, Chicago's a perfect example. I live 25 miles from the racetrack, Chicagoland Speedway, and they've struggled with attendance here the last several years. And now they moved this year's race to June, just before Daytona, and I have to question if they were to make a Monday night race in Chicagoland, what would that do for that racetrack? I think it would be a huge boon for the track and a huge boon for NASCAR to see a Monday night race on prime time, on NBC. It wouldn't get any better than that.
I mean, you mentioned the NFL, how that came back. I agree with you. Like I said, I thought the Daytona 500 had become must-watch when it was on Monday night. And it was just, I mean, admittedly, the third Sunday in February, that's always belonged to the Daytona 500. I get it. But, I guess there are people who will be watching instead college basketball or hockey or whatever. When this was on Monday night at that time, it really there was no competition. And everybody in sports media was watching that. And I mean, well, maybe there's an argument to move the Daytona 500 to Monday night. I don't know if they'll ever do that, but, and I'm not saying they should, but you get the point that I'm trying to make. Yes, what could happen if, let's say, in the future, it becomes the week of Pocono, and you have, let's say, one race on Wednesday, as you say, and then Sunday, and then you can have traditional qualifying and so on throughout that. All right.
And here's another example, just to follow up what you're saying. I mean, think about it. If we have the final race of the season, on a Monday night, prime time, would you draw a larger crowd, both attendance-wise as well as in front of the TV, than you would on Sunday afternoon? I think you actually probably would.
I agree with you, and I'll tell you, I've made this prediction before. I don't think we're going to have Monday Night Football after 2022. If we do, it'll be on NFL Network. That's my prediction. I've said that for a while. The contract with ESPN ends in 2021. I don't think they want to pay $2 billion to the NFL for it. My own opinion. Okay, but no inside, but that's just a guess right here. By the way, I'm trying to guess why Bubba Wallace, Danny Suarez were trying to, 40 years later, revisit Yarborough and Allison. What was that all about?
Well, it was, very, like I said, it was a very dramatic race, and, even with those guys, back in the pack, they had a run-in late in the race, and they carried over onto, after the race as well, too. I mean, the interesting thing is Suarez, he has really picked up his game, not only performance-wise this season, but also, remember, this is, by my count, this is at least the second run-in he's had with another driver this year. He also had that incident with Michael McDowell back in, California, I think it was, if I'm right. Somewhere back there, several races ago. So, I mean, he is just, he's really, exhibiting, his fieriness, and he's not going to be pushed around. And, the thing that surprised me, though, is that Suarez and Bubba Wallace are friends. They've been, fast friends ever since Suarez came into NASCAR, and they both kind of, developed around the same time in the Cup Series, in the Xfinity Series as well, too. So, again, he did he's a moment kind of thing. I'm sure that by the time they get to Washington Glen this coming weekend, they'll be back to being buddies again.
I'm going to end this on a downer, all right? Right now, I think Jimmy Johnson's 17th in the points, so he wouldn't make the playoffs. He ran over the Jack. That prevented a nice run. Ran over Jack in the pit road. Of course, we all know he lost his Lowe's sponsorship this year and such. I just wonder, we were thinking about, okay, Jimmy Johnson, could he be Dale Earnhardt 98, coming back? Could he be Hamlin? I mean, Hamlin didn't win a race last year, and now he comes back at Pocono, always a track that's been friendly to him. Is Jimmy Johnson, your opinion now, post-1983 Richard Petty?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, that was a whole different era back
Sure.
than it is now. I mean, back then, yes, it was competitive, but it was nowhere near the competitiveness with the parity we have today. That's the first thing. And number two is that, you look at a guy like Jimmy Johnson, it's got to be him up inside because, for all those years he was going on and winning races, 83 races, he was winning 7 championships, tying him with both Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt Sr. And, it was almost like a foregone conclusion he was going to win number 8 to become the all-time winningest champion in the sport, and then all of a sudden, boom, the floor basically just dropped out on him. So I still think he's going to make it back. I still think he's going to make the playoffs. I still think he's going to have a good chance in the playoffs. The question is, will he be able to get out of that first round? I mean, last year or the year before last, he went to Dover, which was the cutoff race for the first round, and that's a place he's won 10 times at, and he fails to win, and he gets knocked out of the playoffs after the first round. I mean, Jimmy Johnson, who would have thought that? That kind of thing. So I think that he just needs a win, and I've kind of floated this idea very casually, very quietly, but I'm going to mention it to you, Mark, and I want to get your thoughts about it. What happens if if you're Rick Hendrick right now, you want to make sure Jimmy Johnson gets in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Do you bring back Chad Knaus for, let's say the last 2-3 races, if we're at that point of the regular season, and make him the crew chief again? Does the lightning in a bottle strike again, and do they take Chad away from William Byron, or do they trade crew chiefs just say for the rest of the season, something like that? just to see what happens. I think that, it's as far-fetched as it sounds and seems, maybe that's the solution. I don't know, but I mean, I've been throwing that idea around quietly, and I'm curious to see what other people would think about it.
Look, I got to tell you, it doesn't sound like a bad idea to me. It sounds like, I keep putting baseball references in with NASCAR or something, but just let me go with this. It sounds like to me, years and years ago, when the Pirates used to bring back Danny Murtaugh as their manager. He used to be in kind of, maybe not the best health, but generally speaking, when they would do that, the Buccos would win divisions, and if not the World Series in '71. And, you had to have the magic formula. And there was, Bill Verdon, who became a manager for many, many years in the big leagues, they once replaced, new school at that time, Verdon, with old school Murtaugh to do it and all this, but it got the results. It may have prevented them from having a good manager and for a long term. But I think right now Johnson needs results, because I am wondering, and I can't be the only one, is Jimmy Johnson now, the new post-1983 Richard Petty? It's getting to look that way. And even if he made the playoffs, I'm thinking of him as like a Tony Stewart in his last year, where, okay, he's in there, but that's a swan song. He's not really going to win this thing, that sort of thing. By the way, Tony Stewart, should he just leave NASCAR and go into professional wrestling? Did you hear about this with the with the fan chasing him down or something like that?
I'm going to defer on that.
Okay. And I like Tony Stewart, but, that's just... It seems right now that he's becoming, he always had that brash part to him as well. Jerry Bonkowski is a very enjoyable person to talk to. He's not all that brash. Listen to him Mondays and Fridays at 1 o'clock here, and read him at NBCSports.com, as well as listen to him on Sirius XM. Tri-City Sports Now. We'll be back after this.